This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I wanna talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
Hey there, hi there, ho there, hoes. This is the podcast making, public transit taking, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing son of a gun, Tim the Nerd, welcoming you to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, part of the Deluxe Edition Network. Head to deluxeeditionnetwork.com to find out more information about all of the lovely shows that are a part of that network. And seated next to me, we have the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest. We have Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
I am good, Tim the Nerd. How are you?
I am very, very good. Now, one thing I know you wanted to bring up right away, and something that I've been talking about endlessly on the show for months, ever since we heard it was going to be a thing, is Dolly Parton's brand new album.
Dolly Parton has a new album out. That's right. It is called Rockstar, and it features many, many duets and collabs with original artists of rock and roll songs that Dolly covers. There is, of course, the one original Dolly song. There might be more than one, but the first song on the album is Rockstar by Dolly. And it is basically the plot of The Pick of Destiny, only in a song, and the girl grew up in Appalachia instead of the Midwest.
No, there's a movie. Even though Jack Black didn't grow up in the Midwest, he was a Los Angeles kid. As a young kid, he was in a Nintendo commercial in the 80s.
Yeah, he was a child actor, and his parents are very involved in the industry. I don't know exactly in what capacity, but they live in Culver City, so.
I mean, having people, family members in the industry just makes it easier for someone to dip their toe into the entertainment industry waters because they know what to do.
Yeah, it's just like if you have gone to college and your children, you're encouraging them to go to college. You're not only encouraging them to go to college, you're helping them by sharing your experiences going to college. So like when they go and their financial aid is screwed up, you can say, yeah, that happened to me once, but here's what I did. And I'm sure if you do X, you were able to share that information. And when you don't have that conduit and you're first generation college student, it's really hard because you don't have any context for what's happening. And it's very bureaucratic and weird.
Exactly. I mean, especially because, something that a bit of knowledge about the industry that I think the average person may not have paid attention to until the SAG-AFTRA strike was the fact that most people working in Hollywood aren't making, 6 figures, 7 figures or more, per job. A lot of them are just normal 9-to-5 people. Maybe they're getting paid, like at low end 40 to 50,000, but they're getting a good solid at best 5-figure salary, and I could certainly benefit from having a good high paying 5-figure salary or something like that. So I'm certainly jealous, but still, you're right, it is unique. But back to Dolly. My initial thoughts on it are, it's not going to be an album that I'm probably going to listen to again. It was one of those deals that I really respected her motivation behind, creating this album. I've said that ad nauseum on this show. She didn't have to do this. She could have easily just accepted the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination and did her thing. But she took it upon herself to say, as if I'm being recognized by these people, I want to give them a reason to give me that recognition. And I thought she did a damn good job, especially due to the variety of rock artists she brought in. I mean, because she could have stuck with the classic rockers, got John Fogerty or, whoever, which she did, to come play on it. But, she also got, her goddaughter, Miley Cyrus, on the album, plus Joan Jett, among others. Her cover of Freebird on the song uses it kind of touching back on the Now and Then thing. It features vocals from the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd, who passed away. So she was able to do a duet, that way on there. So, yeah, again, I respect
I
all
was
of her
I was
fans.
also really impressed with the variety of people that she collaborated with for the album. I mean, she's got Lizzo on there. She's got Michael McDonald.
Oh,
Like, there's something going back way back in the day, but not far enough back in the day, if you know what I'm saying. It's yet to reach classic status, I think, but it's sort of yacht rock, I guess.
what if the world believed? Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oof.
Always yeah, so
Michael McDonald actually wrote a Van Halen song.
that's weird.
It's on the 1984 album. It's I'll Wait. I'll wait till your love comes down.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, that one. Anyway,
Interesting.
that's me singing, folks. Totally derailing everything again. But what would you say would be your highlight of that album?
Probably just because of the mood I've been in, the Let It Be with Paul McCartney and Ringo. Just because I've been kind of obsessed with the Beatles lately. And so, it's just a chance to hear them doing something new and like being okay with Dolly Parton, being like, okay, we're big stars and we're like highly influential and we have a body of work and all of this, but we recognize that this other person is a superstar. This other person has, their whole own audience. They have been innovative in their own style of music. And so it feels like a really respectful relationship.
Oh, to the Beatles' credit. I mean, they, along with the Rolling Stones, and there are others as well, were very, very open about, being as vocal as they could about the music that inspired them, that they liked. Smokey Robinson, for instance, says that the Beatles cover of one of his songs on their second album with the Beatles, one, made him a lot of money, but two, the fact that they would go out in interviews and say, we heard this great album from Smokey Robinson, you should all check it out. He was able to grow his audience. And so, yeah, it's a different situation with Dolly, but maybe not so much because, there are hardcore country fans who are like the constant joke I keep on saying that's not funny anymore, but it makes me laugh. There are two types of music, country and Western, There are
Now,
people that
do
are like,
you think there's going to be a backlash amongst the country fans out there who maybe are concerned that Dolly is losing her countryfiedness and becoming cityfied?
I don't think so. I mean, especially because, like, all she has publicly said about this whole experience is that it was her chance to pay it back to, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by making a rock album. I don't think, we're going to see her, making any more rock albums or whatever. But, on the flip side, I could see this experience opening her up in future albums to collaborations that she may not have initially thought of. I mean, come on, Rob Halford and Dolly Parton did a duet.
Right.
And think of the positives that, a country artist of her stature could do in terms of opening people's minds about, at the very least, respecting another artist.
Yeah, and certainly this sort of curated by Dolly rock and roll songs will, could be some of the rock and roll songs that those country fans know, like the few they're going to know in the future because they were on Dolly's album.
Yeah, and I think her being a student of music, I think she also understands that at the end of the day, the labels we put on music were put on there by companies trying to, classify music as a product. Music is music at the end of the day. The only reason we call rock and roll is, again, to say songs that sound like this all fit into this group.
I mean, it's interesting. The algorithm does that for us now. And so we don't even have styles of music anymore. We just have the algorithm.
And that got me to thinking too, because like I mentioned, that it was either last week or the week before, that Colin Hanks documentary, "All Things Must Pass," about Tower Records, and it was the rise and fall. I mean, everybody's at least familiar with the name. Maybe they haven't gone there, but I did go to the original Tower Records when I lived in Sacramento. I stopped there once and bought a Pete Townsend Greatest Hits album.
Hey.
Yeah, but he talked about at the end of Tower Records' run, he realized the mistake it was going all in on the album format. Because what iTunes ended up doing, what Napster ended up doing, is getting people back in the mindset of what records initially were, singles. Occasionally an album would come out, but generally people would be buying a bunch of 45s, spending like $1 or $2 to get that one song. And with modern technology the way it is, it's the same thing, just clicking and downloading at that point. And if more record stores had a little more foresight in terms of how they sell the product. I mean, maybe they could have had like computer stations that were, was specifically made computers that people can buy, like a 5 or 10 gigabyte, 8 gigabyte flash drive or something like that. And then they can fill up whatever music on that flash drive, and the flash drive will cost like $30 or something like that. I mean, they could have been doing that, but no, they went all in on albums. And if anything, what I think the internet did show was that most people bought albums just because that was the only thing being put out there. Singles weren't that popular. I mean, in terms of, sales, when, it was easier to just, because most record stores, you could probably, confirm this, in the 80s and 90s, at least, didn't really have like a, huge singles section. I remember going,
No, I mean, we had this great record store in the town that I grew up in called something Records.
that's a great place.
It was.
Nationwide chain, yeah.
It was not a nationwide chain. It was this one, and it was really famous, really, from where I'm from, because it was.
It was so famous that it awed you into forgetting.
Yes, I was so awestruck by all the records. Roy
Yeah, right.
Rogers, I don't know, I can't remember, but anywho, we used to go in there and they had a lot of singles, but from like the Oak Ridge Boys and stuff.
Yeah. Like the only time I remember a single was going into Target as a kid and, seeing like cassettes and like, "Ooh, wow, this is $1? This whole cassette is $1?" And then you find out it's 2 songs.
Right. Remember this cassette singles? Yeah,
Like,
singles.
yeah, I like like brought up this song on last year when I was doing Tim's Tremendous Tapes, but I bought a Paul McCartney single. That's how I first became aware of that song, "Hope of Deliverance," that I featured on the show.
That was the B-side?
No, it was the A side. The B side was this little ditty he put together with Linda about getting revenge on a lady who had furs.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, they're both hardcore like vegans.
Right.
In Linda's case, was, but yeah, like sing it.
And then Heather Mills is also
Or
was.
Bye. Anyway, but yeah, like once I saw like the fact that I just got this small cassette with 2 songs on it, it was yeah. I mean, I could not picture myself having like hundreds of those with just 1 or 2 songs on there. It made no sense, and so you had to stick with the albums. You had to buy an album that you knew would have 1 or 2 songs that you would really love, but the rest were garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So Anyway, back to Dolly.
Back to Dolly.
Like I said, I highly respect her for doing this. In a lot of ways, this reminds me of what Pat Boone did in the 90s. Do you remember that rock and roll album he put out?
No, I don't remember a rock and roll album from Pat Boone in the 90s.
Yeah, it was called No More Mr. Nice Guy. It was him covering just hard rock and metal songs, but in his
That
own
is
way.
bizarre. That's bizarre. How have I never heard of this?
I mean, it should be out there on streaming, but I remember Howard Stern when, because Pat Boone came on the Howard Stern show, and to Pat Boone's credit, he, at the time, before he did this album, his big shtick was working with like televangelists and having his own show on like one of those televangelist networks.
Hmm.
Him doing this album lost him those jobs. But he came of the mindset of this is music and this is a way to be able to connect with people that, you may not necessarily understand them. He was thinking of it of an empathetic way. And even though the results are not that good, it's the same spirit. And I respect that. He came and Dolly Parton came with a full reverence for the history of rock music and decided to put their stamp on it. And I totally respect that and would, support any artist doing something similar.
Well, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, Tim.
I know. I'm sad. What is that quote from Blazing Saddles? I sound as pretty as a $20 whore. Anyway.
What's been going on with you, Tim? What would you like to
Oh man,
tell us about?
interesting week here. The other day was able to catch the first of the three new Doctor Who specials.
Nice.
Russell T Davies, the guy who is responsible for creating the British version of Queer as Folk, was also the guy who in 2005 was able to help revive Doctor Who. Russell T Davies is back on the show. And for these specials, they were able to get the 10th Doctor to reprise the role of the Doctor. So David Tennant's back, and Catherine Tate is back as Donna Noble, and it was a fun reunion. It's not an episode that will be so good that it will convert people that are not fans of Doctor Who. And a lot of...
Will any of the episodes of Doctor Who do that?
Yes, but not for everybody. That's true.
I mean, I guess you can't say that of any show that they would have something that everybody would like, but Doctor Who does seem to be its own flavor.
It is a unique show, but I've been watching it ever since the early 80s. So
Wow.
it's definitely been something that's a part of my life entertainment wise.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend checking that out. And also got a chance to watch Survivor Series, the WWE's premium live event.
Nice.
Yeah,
And how did you get to watch this, Tim?
I saw it on the cock.
On the Peacock?
Yes.
The PCOK?
The wonderfully named app from NBC, Comcast, Universal, whatever the hell they call themselves. It was an interesting show. Now, going into it, the show was held in Chicago. And going into it, there were a lot of rumors beforehand that, we would see, a Chicago native, CM Punk. I mean, do you remember me talking about CM Punk with his AEW run on the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. Earlier this year, CM Punk was in a physical altercation with another wrestler, and AEW decided to fire him. And, because of that, going up into the Survivor Series, the WWE made it a point to reach out to the wrestling media and talk to them and said, hey, we have no interest in what, in bringing him back. And what we are doing right now is kind of setting the stage for returning wrestler Randy Orton, a guy who got started right along with John Cena back in the early 2000s. He made his return at the Survivor Series, which was awesome to see because he had been out for about a year and a half with back surgery and surgery that at first they suspected he might not be back. So it was awesome being able to see him back. But yeah, all of the wrestling websites were saying, it's, WWE saying it's not going to happen. So it ended up watching the show. The last match was the men's War Games match. And, Randy Orton ends up being the last person to come out. Cody Rhodes ends up getting the pin, which was awesome because this was Cody Rhodes' first War Games match. And back in 1987, his father, Dusty Rhodes, created the War Games match. So it's kind of a full circle moment. So he got to be able to honor his father there. And so watching it and, thought that was a cool moment. The camera pulls back and, you see like because the War Games match is a steel cage surrounding two rings put together. So the camera goes back, the copyright notice, that shows up at the end of, any TV show, copyright, whatever, caught up. I grab the remote, then CM Punk's music hits, and everybody seeing that, whether at home or in that arena, freaked out. Like that music hit, and I immediately jumped up from the couch, and I'm like, "Holy fucking shit, they did it! Yes, yes, yes!" And I'm screaming. The cats ran out the room; they didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I stopped pretty quickly, but then I made sure to text you to let you know what was going on, just in case the neighbor, was like, "What the hell?" They brought CM Punk back. This is a hell freezes over moment because in 2014, CM Punk walked out on the company and got his termination papers, official termination papers, because they had initially treated it as a suspension, but he got terminated on the day of his wedding. And the WWE,
It's harsh.
Yeah, and the WWE ended up funding a lawsuit by a WWE doctor, like a defamation lawsuit or something like that against him, which CM Punk ended up winning that. But they're back, and it's all because of AEW. Now, the WWE at this point, they understand that he's a handful. Even though I really, really loved this moment, and, this moment, the last time I had gotten up surprised screaming at my TV was about 14 years ago at WrestleMania 25. So the fact that, they're still able to get me, I really loved that moment. But like we've talked about on the show before, he comes with his own set of issues. It's just some of those issues I don't think would be repeated in the WWE. Like, for one, I don't see at like a press conference situation CM Punk starting to mouth off about other wrestlers because unlike Tony Khan, Triple H is about 6'6", 6'7", and built like a fridge.
Yeah.
And would also know to cut mics and get security to drag somebody out, if they did decide to go into business for himself. I think there are going to be some things in place that will prevent the stuff that happened in AEW from happening again, but he's also has a long established history of being temperamental too.
Temperamental?
Yeah, believe it or not.
No, I'm just saying, maybe it's a little above and beyond temperamental. I don't know.
For a lot of the stuff.
Temperamental is being like, I want only green M&Ms. Being, assaulting other people is more
childish, yeah. He was trying in AEW to be the elder statesman. He felt he had to carry the other people, and they ended up resenting him a little bit. But he ended up, proving their point by reacting to them in the way he did. Now, a part of me wonders why AEW fired him, but at the end of the day, why have somebody stick around that ultimately doesn't want to be there?
Yeah. I feel that way about relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a microcosm of life. Wrestling is, right?
In a lot of ways. But it's created a lot of talk, let's put it that way. And like I said, what I have enjoyed most about this whole experience ever since Saturday, seeing that is the fact that it got so many people. Like the next day I went to TikTok and there were tons and tons of videos from people that were in the arena or at home, recording their reactions, and everybody's like freaking out. You had grown men weeping, women were crying and, screaming and all that stuff. It was just insane, the reaction that a pro wrestling angle was able to get out of people.
Yeah. I mean, when you described it to me when it first happened, I was like not getting it.
Mhm.
Like you were like, I got up and I jumped up and down and I yelled at the TV and I was like, "Why were you mad? What was happening?" And it's sort of that way with the crowd of people. You showed that little clip to me, and the roar of the crowd of people when he shows up, when they start playing his music, right?
Mhm.
The crowd goes crazy, like you said, and it feels like a real uncontrollable mob to me when something like that happens. So, I was most interested in the fact that CM Punk was engaging like physically with his fans
Mhm.
as he was coming into the stadium. And he obviously felt really comfortable, and the fans seemed to really adore him, and everybody seemed to stay where they were supposed to stay, and nobody jumped over the barrier or, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, it's not the
it's not like a punk
70s.
show.
It's not the 70s. People, when they walk in and sit down in the audience of a WWE show, know what to expect these days. It's not like the 60s and 70s where you have grandmas bringing a little pistol in their purse to, fire some shots at a bad guy manager that, got the win, illegally for his client, which may sound hyperbolic and silly, but that has happened more than once.
Wow.
But it is a demonstration. That was a demonstration of just what pro wrestling can do at its best. And that's, yeah, to your point, just create these sudden bursts of emotions like, oh my God, type of deal, and getting everybody cheering like that. This is like one of those once in a lifetime type of moments. Just it happens in sports too. Like 1988, Los Angeles Dodgers. Former Detroit Tiger Kurt Gibson had like massive leg injuries and shouldn't have been in the game, but Tommy Lasorda, the manager of the Dodgers, just needed somebody to go up there and swing, and so he hobbles up to the plate, strike one, strike two. Dennis Eckersley, one of the greatest closing pitchers in baseball history, throws another ball. Kirk swings and boom, home run. Nobody expected it, but that audience went nuts. Like the television camera was shaking. And I love moments like that. Moments like that are awesome to experience.
Sure. I mean, I see where you're coming from. I guess I've never had that experience where I felt in tune with the crowd.
It's all about that.
I've always felt alienated from the crowd.
It's all about that emotional connection. If you don't have that, in wrestling's case, if you don't have that emotional connection, positive or negative, with a particular wrestler, you may enjoy the overall experience, but you're not getting into it as much as people that are there because they have an emotional attachment to a particular performer. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like it would be like you having Emma, a Masterpiece Theater version of Emma, play on TV, and you're getting all into it, and I'm like, yeah. Because I don't have that emotional attachment with Jane Austen's works that you do.
Right. Yes. Got you.
Yeah, so it's that, and yeah, I get it. I'll be the first to say it. Wrestling is entertainment at its most base. Very simple. That's why you can go to Turkmenistan, turn on the TV, and watch a local pro wrestling show and get everything that's going on without understanding the language. But what happened Saturday is one of those moments that shows the beauty of what this entertainment can do, and that's just make a lot of people happy.
Well, good. I'm glad that a lot of people were made happy by the CM Punk re-emergence.
Yes. Is this where you thought your life would be at 49, talking about pro wrestling?
Not at all. Not at all, Tim.
Okay. Well, how about we send it over to one of our friends at the Deluxe Edition Network?
Let's do it.
All right.
I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, hang tight, folks, and hear this message.
Welcome in to Metalhead Journeys. What is Metalhead Journeys? It's exactly how it sounds. It's a journey through the world of metal by a couple of metalheads. Are you thinking of getting into metal? Where do you begin? There's so many different subgenres. What bands are good? What albums are good? We'll provide answers to all of those questions. We'll handle all the research and do all the dirty work by listening to the good, the bad, and the ugly, so you don't have to. Classic albums, new albums, bands no one's ever heard of. Get ready as we'll applaud and criticize with the same passion. This is Metalhead Journeys.
Conflict sucks. I hate dealing with, conflict. If it comes, with my anxiety being what it is, it makes it really hard to have any sort of conflict with people. So, what are your thoughts about it? I think you handle it a lot better than I do.
Well, I don't know. I think that I have an ability to detach
Mm-hmm.
that is helpful when trying to deal with conflict.
Hmm.
And I think that's a little bit different from avoidance. Like what I think you're talking about is I'm going to avoid the conflict. I'm going to never talk to that person again. I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to whatever, like I'm going to completely separate myself. That's avoiding the conflict. What I see as a healthy way to experience conflict is to recognize that you're having a conflict and then be able to detach from what that other person feels, thinks, or does in reaction to you in terms of your own self belief in yourself, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, this time of year especially too. We have situations to where high conflict situations and high conflict people will come into our lives. I mean, it could be at an employer. If it's like an office type job, maybe you have somebody that you work with that's a little overstressed because of the holidays and they become a little overbearing at work. Or if it's like a school situation, same type of deal. Other students are stressed out by whatever, and everybody's nerves are on all frayed and all that stuff, and so there's potentially going to be conflict. But also this time of year, most especially, a lot of people do have family traditions of getting together and enjoying the holidays together. And when we have a political situation in this country the way that we do now, to where everybody thinks that they have to hold the flag for their political beliefs, you're going to have some issues dealing with high conflict people at some point, especially during the holidays, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are the kinds of those close relationships, those relationships you can't really easily get out of, work relationships, school relationships, those things that you have to engage in. It can be really stressful when those relationships are challenged, when there's conflict. But there can be a lot of conflict because you're really invested. When it's somebody you can just like, okay, weirdo, half stranger, no. Right. That's completely different from dealing with somebody that you have to talk to on a daily basis, for example.
Yes. So what we thought we would do for our main event this week is go back to our good friends at Psychology Today and discuss the article from Dr. Tracy S. Hutchinson. The article is called 7 Ways to Handle High Conflict People During the Holidays. And like we normally do, we're going to go through the bullet points, read those points from the article, and then we will have a conversation about that. So did you want me to start off?
Sure, why don't you start?
All right. Number 1, reframe your expectations. Your goal for your time together should be to have a nice time that is free of conflict, rather than attempting to fix the past. An alternate goal could be promoting a positive relationship between your kids and a high conflict family member, Thus, a successful outcome would be them having a positive interaction, even if your interactions with the same family member have some bumps. And yeah, primarily this article's focus was on, family members during the holidays. But I think this is something, in general you can keep in mind too, for something like workmates. You don't have to go out and have a beer with everybody you work with, but as long as everybody is contributing positively to the goal of, keeping the business up and running, then theoretically you should be able to work with people. Finding something, even if it's something really small that you grasp onto to keep your sanity, to help reframe everything is not a bad thing, because, sometimes our brains, especially when emotion gets involved, don't want to see those positives.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a good point that you can't force a engagement in fixing the past today at Thanksgiving dinner, right? So, you're not trying to resolve unresolved issues with someone. You're trying to move forward from this moment and just, try to appreciate something about them.
Maybe these mashed potatoes would taste better if you didn't get that abortion 5 years ago.
Oh my God, trigger warning.
Sorry. Any more thoughts on reframing?
I'll reframe you.
All right, how about you go on to the next bullet point here?
Okay. Manage the relationship. Do not engage. Focus on the outcome of a particular interaction, not the relationship itself. Engaging and attempting to repair relationships with emotionally immature people tends to be very unlikely during the holiday season or at any other time of the year. Approaching the relationship differently is key. Wow, isn't this just true? Emotionally immature people tend to be very unlikely of being able to repair relationships. So why try with them? Right? Like, if you know the outcome is that they're not going to be able to carry any emotional labor.
Yeah, and I think
why engage?
Yeah, I mean, I think we discussed it in last week's show. The fact that, if you do have family members that are poisonous to you, why have them in your life just because of the shared heredity?
Right.
There's no reason to be loyal to people who continuously show through their actions that they don't have your best interest at heart.
Right.
I mean, I think that's like the big realization from like my kids' generation. I wish more people in my generation, and I wish I had that mindset in my 20s of doing, what you could to have the family that's in your life, whether it's your blood family or your chosen family, having those people be in your life and not having someone else in your life just because you have to, just because of a shared last name.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely, I agree.
All right. Shall I go on to the next one?
Next one.
All right. Number 3, set limits on exposure time. Determine in advance exactly how much time you will need to spend during your visits. Is it a few hours, an evening? Are they visiting you for a week? Once you have this number in mind, it can become a source of comfort. For example, telling yourself, this is only for a few hours, I can do this. To further set limits, consider surrounding yourself with buffers or safer people and family members, i.e. those who are mature or not drinking heavily.
Mm-hmm.
Wise words here, because, maybe there is a situation to where, you do have to connect with a family member for whatever reason. Maybe, and this is just an example, I have not done it, but let's say you're part of, let's say your whole family lives in a particular part of the country, but you don't. So you don't go back to family reunions every single year, but you do on occasion. And there happens to be one family member that, you don't have that good of a relationship with. It's like you're there to see the other people, but you can set limits on what you're going to tolerate, because if like your Uncle Bill is going to be drinking a little too much and then talking, out of his ass about politics, and that's going to get you upset, why stick around for any longer than you have to?
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I think that plan of having a plan for how long you're going to stay and, being able to talk to yourself about how little time.
And having the buffers there too. No, because especially if we're talking, high conflict people in family relationships, there's a lot of times where people will know that there is a high conflict situation going on. So you're going to have people that hopefully, cross fingers, will be open to being that buffer person. They can keep an eye on your interactions with that other person, and if they think, you need someone, you need someone to step in to break the situation, then they can be there. They can definitely be a nice psychological crutch too. At least knowing that you have that.
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of like a cat going in a hole.
Yeah, so I was looking over and Tim had to look down to see that little Miss Annie had her head stuck in a hole, a little felt kitty pod, but she just had her head in the hole and it was really cute.
Yep. All right, how about you go on to number 4?
Okay, let's go on to number 4. The cat's being very cute right now. Okay, change the subject. Remember, you will not be able to reason with the unreasonable. Keep subjects light when the HCP wants to pull you into drama. Be prepared for this and have alternative strategies and interventions when it occurs. Distractions, redirecting the conversation to something more positive, or even introducing a shared activity such as a game, a Netflix series, or a sports game may be helpful.
I could see this being especially effective. I mean, I brought it up at the start of the topic, but when you do have so many people that are openly talking about their political beliefs and, acting like that they have to carry the flag for their political beliefs, this time of year, unfortunately, you are going to have people that, will squabble a little bit more if politics are brought up. But to this bullet points, to what they were saying in this bullet point here, yeah, if you can change that distraction, if you can talk about a pro wrestling event, if you can talk about sports, if you can talk about what movie, you're going to watch on Netflix or something like that, or put on some music or do something to change that conversation, you can redirect it. Because I think what people tend to forget when they do have those, relative yelling matches about politics is that at the end of the day, this is just another person who's getting information kind of like you do. They may be wrong. They may be wrong, but there's, they're not exactly politicians themselves. They're getting news the same way you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think, that's the thing about high conflict people is that they can take what could be a rational or reasonable position and they're just so unreasonable that you can't have a conversation with them.
And some people like to poke the stick a little too much.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have plenty of people like, owning the libs is a thing in conservative circles, and there are plenty of conservative people that will try and say, "Well, what about this? What about this?" Essentially just the poking you and poking you and poking you to try and get a reaction.
Right. Really annoying.
It is. It is.
All right. How about number 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, number 5.
Yeah. Let's do it. Number 5. Focus on humor. Unlike that interaction I just gave. Sharing positive or funny family memories may help lighten the mood if things get tense. Photo albums and videos may help others recall these positive memories or trigger storytelling. That's a limited example because, again, the article primarily focused on, dealing with high conflict people in a family, holiday get together setting. But, focusing on humor for pretty much any type of tense situation. If you can crack a joke, that kind of, deflates the negative emotions in a lot of people. I mean, how do you think, like in high school, you have plenty of like people that grew up to be stand-up comedians that were rather short, ended up using their humor as a way to get bullies to not beat them up.
Yeah.
Chris Rock being one of them.
Absolutely. I mean, humor is that sort of resort in desperate moments to something to lighten the darkness, right? Like it's not funny unless it's real.
Yeah, and when it comes to the family situation, yeah, if you can, tell a funny story about a family member, doing something silly or something like that, and if that's what it takes to, get the mood lightened up, then by all means go ahead and do it. And even if you got to do something silly to get people to get a quick laugh, so you can let the tension out of the room, nothing wrong with that.
I think for me sometimes that humor can be difficult because it can be sort of making fun of someone
Yeah,
because this is common person. And often we take like what we perceive as negative personality traits and sort of talk about like, wasn't it awful when Aunt Mabel did this because she was so weird and
well, I mean, and a lot of times too, it's kind of like sarcasm, how somebody may say something sarcastic and not necessarily mean it, but if it's told in just the right way, someone else may still believe it anyway. And to your point, yeah, you want to make sure it's the type of story that is not going to offend anybody. Like me, I wouldn't want to, tell a story about how my oldest or something like that was caught, eating food out of the garbage when he was 1. Never happened. Never happened. But, if I said something like that,
yeah.
that would be inappropriate if I did not clear it with them first. If that was a common story that they had no problem with me telling and I knew this for a fact, that's a different story.
Sure, although I think people can feel peer pressure to agree. Like people have got to be really into their autonomy and to stand up to a parent who's gonna tell a story about them, who says, can I tell the story about you? Don't you think?
You do got to be respectful. Like, I know my mother was not the type that would be.
Yeah.
She, like we mentioned it last week, she was the type of parent that, as a grandparent would give, very young kids a lot of candy that they shouldn't have. And yeah, so she would also come up with stories as well. And yeah, you don't want a conflict with a parent, but ideally it would be a situation to where, the parent and the kid would have that rapport enough so that the parent would know it was okay.
Yeah.
And not all parents have that. There was a time where I didn't have that with my kids, but yeah. Yes, like we said with the episode we did 2 episodes back about the words to retire. It's not about censoring yourself, I guess. It's about knowing the power of words. And if, telling a story about somebody is going to make them feel bad, do you need to tell that story?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How about you go on with the last even bullet point?
Okay. Take breaks. Taking breaks could mean taking a walk, going outside, or even going to the bathroom or another room to regroup. Taking deep breaths, try inhaling for 6 seconds, then exhaling for 6 seconds, can help reduce anxiety or tension and calm your autonomic nervous system if you get triggered. So this is really good advice. This taking of breaks, getting away if you can get away, taking it in small doses, trying to remember how to feel more grounded, and that feeling more grounded will actually make you feel better. All of these things I think are important in maintaining sort of your ability to get through a interaction with a high conflict person.
Exactly. And, breathing can help tremendously. I mean, once I started latching onto that myself in terms of what it could do to benefit me, like the other day, Mimsy was acting a bit of a fool. And there was a point, I was like, Mimsy, I said that, and, she just kept on doing her thing. And then I had to just take a deep breath myself to, not let that initial annoyance of the cat acting a fool, take over.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, taking that deep breath can do. So, yeah, if you got that relative that's spouting off about something political that you don't agree with and you just feel you have to defend, take that deep breath and then, yeah, like step outside. If you're a smoker, you have a whole reason to go outside. I'm doing a good thing.
This is why people who have not smoked for years will smoke around their family.
Mm-hmm.
Or sneak off to smoke around their family or whatever, because it's so stressful and you need a release.
And what could be done as well, I mean, is, depending on where this family gathering is at, like if it's a big enough place, why not have a separate room set up to where, you have the family congregating like in a living room or dining room or whatever, but you also, like in the basement of the garage, have a game room set up to where people can go and break off if they need to. Like, I remember that was kind of like the setup of what my aunt did, with all the family gatherings at her house in Granville growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty common to have alternate space.
But, again, the point here is to use that as a way to kind of, just kind of get everything back in balance. And the next bullet point here is kind of a nice way to sum it up here. Detach. Mindfulness skills can help you observe the interaction and detach from it emotionally. If you pull into a conflict with a high conflict person, mentally repeating the words detach, detach, detach can help remove yourself mentally and avoid reacting emotionally. Well said. I mean, I've done this myself many, many times over the years and have had it work. I've also had it not work. I think the important thing, overall with any of these two is to just not really beat yourself up because we're all human. Emotions, when they do kick in, especially if we're dealing with high conflict people and they stir up, intense emotions in you, you can't beat yourself up if you do have that rare instance to where you just were pushed over the line. Obviously, I'm not saying get into a fist fight with grandpa, but if you just happen to get so annoyed with somebody that you started yelling at them and then walked off and then drove away home, it sucks that happened, but we're human, right?
Yeah. Boy, this stuff is just like more and more difficult to like talk about given how close we are to the holidays. Like, I'm
But
finding it triggering just to talk about this.
I remember that time in 1997, damn it. Um, but that is one reason I think to kind of talk about it, at least in broad terms, like, yeah, we would be assholes if we got into like too many deep personal, family stories about this particular topic here. But, talking about it in a lot of ways, similar to some of what the bullet points have touched upon, is one of those things that if you do remind yourself of it, it's a thing, and that, yeah, maybe I should be a little more focused on doing the right thing here and not let emotions carry me wherever they may.
Yeah, being aware of our emotions is the first step to being able to just accept them and not be responsive to them.
Amen to that. Do you have any more thoughts on high conflict people, how to deal with them?
Best avoid it, I'd say. This
Yeah.
you get into this like what should you do only if you're going to expose yourself. And there are great reasons why that you might be choosing to do that. I think recognizing that it's a choice
Hmm.
is actually helpful, even if you're going to continue to choose to engage, because knowing it's a choice means you're not trapped. You have agency. You still have autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
and you can express it, even if you don't feel like you can express it by saying, I'm not even going to participate with you anymore. Maybe you can express it by relaxing and not reacting to someone. Maybe that can be the way that you can take a small step towards being able to just say, wow, no thanks.
Yeah, I am so glad my family's in Michigan. You know, yeah, like if I ever got like rich and famous, then I'm sure I'd probably get the invitations to family gatherings again. You know, I don't get them now, thank God. So I don't have to think of reasons to say, oh, yeah, I'm busy that day. I'm washing my hair, type of deal. But this is a time of year that's supposed to be for reflection, supposed to be for happiness. Like we mentioned last week, you know, if your focus when it comes to family is making sure that the family that you do have in your life, chosen or otherwise, are the people that are leading you to be the best possible you, then, you know, hey, we're here for it. But we're not in a perfect world either. We're going to run into people we don't like, including people in our family.
Yep.
You know, you don't get the luxury I have, folks. I can ignore those fuckers anyway. All right. So thank you all for listening. Each week we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Good night.
Rabble, rabble, rabble.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.